Hello. Today we're going to go over some of the basic rules of derivatives. We'll give the rule here with its number, and then we'll write an example for it right there. The first one we're going to talk about is what happens when you take the derivative of a constant. So let me change my color. So d dx of some constant. Give myself a bracket, constant. And what happens is the derivative of any constant is going to be equal to 0. So for example, I give myself d or dx of, let's say, 5. So the derivative of the constant 5 is going to be 0. And that's going to be true for any constant, be it 1, 2, -1, -2, pi. I mean, all of these constants, no matter what, their derivative is 0. The next one we're going to talk about is the power rule, which is if I'm taking the derivative of my function in terms of x, so I have x to a power of, let's say, n, where n is a constant, then what's going to happen is that constant n is going to come down in front as multiplication, and then I'm going to have my function of x, and now the exponent is going to be 1 less. So the n comes down in front, and then the exponent gets subtracted by 1. An example of this would be, let's see, d or dx. Let's say I have x cubed. So as we showed above, the exponent comes down in front as multiplication. So this is a 3. So 3 times x to the 3 minus 1, which can be simplified to say 3x squared. Alright, similar to the power rule, we have one called the constant multiple rule, which is if I have a constant, let's say c, being multiplied to some function of x, then its derivative is going to be that constant times the derivative of that function of x. So essentially, when we see a constant times a function of x, we're just going to leave the constant alone and take the derivative of that function. So for example, let's say I have d of x. Let's say I have 3 times x squared. Alright, so 3 is my constant. It's going to stay out in front. And as we saw from the power rule, the derivative of x squared is going to be 2 times x to the first, or simply 2x. So this is going to be 3 times 2x, which can be simplified into 6x. Alright, so our final set of rules are called the sum and difference rules. The sum rule says that if I have the derivative of some differentiable function of x plus a differentiable function g of x, then their derivative is going to be equal to d dx of f of x plus the derivative of g of x. And the same thing would be true if this was subtraction. So if we were using the difference rule, I would say f of x minus g of x is the same thing as the derivative of f of x minus the derivative of g of x. So let's give ourselves a quick example. So we'll use the sum rule for this one. So if I'm taking the derivative of, let's say, 8x plus x squared, means I'm going to take the derivative of these separately and then add them together. So this is going to be equal to the derivative of 8x, which is 8, and the derivative of x squared, which is 2x. And since I'm adding these two functions together on the left, I continue to add them on the right. If this was, for instance, the derivative of 8x minus x squared, now we're going to use the difference rule, which says that I'm going to take the derivative of these two separately. So again, 8 and 2x. But because I'm subtracting the functions to begin with, I subtract them after I take their derivative.